What's going on there, folks? Good morning, good afternoon. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Wednesday, March 15th, 2023. It's about 12:39 p.m. here along the West Coast in California, where we still got a little bit of activity ramping up here along the West Coast. Also, a pretty nice swarm of earthquakes there into the Puerto Rico area. The latest earthquake shows a 2.8. Let's see where we're at. Over here around Turkey, it looks like. Buried in the mix of earthquakes. All right, let's go ahead and check out the latest activity here from the USGS, starting out here along the West Coast. As we're still seeing some movement kicking off here. I'm leaving the earthquake watch up due to the seismic increase out here. Earlier this morning, we had a little bit of movement into the San Simeon area of the, I guess that's the Central Coast area. I don't really consider that northern or southern California. But did see a little bit of movement kicking off here this morning with a couple smaller quakes, including a 3.5. All these earthquakes here within minutes of each other, just off of the San Simeon fault system here. Now, this area did see an earthquake back in 2003. Checked it out here a little bit. Looks like that struck on December 22nd, 2023. A somewhat of a large quake. There's the felt reports there from a 6.5 back on that date, a fairly shallow depth of about 8 kilometers or so, and they believe it popped there on one of the fault systems nearby, the San Simeon fault, which is I believe that's a thrust fault system that runs down there. Although looking at this map, there's quite a bit of other faults that run through here. A lot of them not even shown up here on the map, but it's a very fragile area in terms of, move that can there, of fault systems here. So it is within the vicinity of that little swarming that we've seen here yesterday on the San Andreas Fault. Let me bring back the last 7 days of earthquake activity here, because we had a pretty good cluster of movement here just on the creeping segment of the San Andreas Fault. A little swarm of earthquakes in 2s and the 3 magnitude department there. We had actually numerous 3.4s within literally seconds of each other. Notice that here, the first 2 literally within 20 seconds of each other. So things are still kind of interesting out here along the West Coast. And we're seeing all this, this activity on the plate boundary and inland and prior to the plate boundary, still leading me to believe that we could see some further earthquake activity out here soon. I'm talking about a little bit more than what we're seeing right now as far as a larger scale movement goes. Down into the south part of the state, Borrego Springs area, 1.1. Still seeing some movement out here along the San Jacinto fault zone. Nothing major across the San Andreas Fault for now, but that's always the worry, with this major plate boundary and the accumulated stress that has been built up here along the southern segment for quite a while. So we'll continue to watch that for some signs of movement over into the area around Nevada and the Fish Lake Valley Fault Zone. A lot of this activity specifically on that fault. Looks like we did have a couple more earthquakes there this morning, some 2s and 1s, and of course some from yesterday as well. So that's kind of been a hot spot of earthquake activity. The last 7 days of movement shows about 49 earthquakes, with the largest magnitude here going to be a 3.9. Numerous other 3s and 2s in there as well. So it's hard to say, if these are foreshocks, aftershocks, main quakes, we just don't know. All I know, it's a sign of regional uptick in earthquake activity here. Roughly about, it seems as though about the Bay Area cut off to Reno southward, showing the most seismic activity here inland along the plate boundary and also along the Pacific plate. So we'll continue to watch that and see how this plays out with the uptick in activity here recently. Up into the Pacific Northwest, a couple small microquakes outside of the Mount Rainier area. Doesn't look like anything spectacular. Around Yellowstone National Park, looks like a couple earthquakes there being listed up on the map this morning. Overall tally over the last 7 days shows about 158 earthquakes of all magnitudes here. Nothing major. That swarming that we're kind of seeing today Looks like it shifted away from the main swarm area that we witnessed here over the past couple days, up around the Hebgen Lake area. That region has seen some historical large damaging earthquakes in the past. See what we got for the Yellowstone thumbnails here, which is the seismograph overview of Yellowstone National Park and also the Hebgen Lake here. Notice here on the Hebgen Lake Webby quarter shows a couple of those smaller earthquakes within the last few hours. Nothing major though, and if you look at the entire graph here, things have kind of mellowed out. Maple Creek even showing a little bit less activity than what we witnessed a couple days ago there with that somewhat intense earthquake swarm. But I don't think it's over. I'm still kind of popping and crackling here with some smaller earthquakes around the northwest corner of the park, so we'll keep that in mind as well. Today, let's see, Texas. What do we got going on in Texas? This looks kind of similar to last night here. Only one earthquake from this morning around the, south of Carlsbad, New Mexico. A little 2.0, 7 kilometers deep. Make sure I turn the bells off. It looks fine. Last night was a crazy one with the update video. Not even joking. That was a little stressful. All right, New Madrid seismic zone over here to the east near the Marston, Missouri area, 1.7. That is the New Madrid seismic zone. Last 30 days of earthquake activity, specifically around the New Madrid zone, not that impressive. Got about 19 earthquakes or so in the New Madrid zone. Just a sign, just letting us know that it's still alive. It's still building up strain, potentially for the next large earthquake in that area. All right, Puerto Rico, I think we've seen that there on the globe with a stacking of flags and circles here indicating quite a bit of earthquake activity kicking off this morning and overnight into our normal swarming area. But it's doing it pretty nicely there with a extreme fashion. Nothing major going on though, far as seismic activity goes, magnitude-wise. Just quite a bit of multitude of 2s and 3s out there. Let me see what we got for the largest magnitude of 4.2, 7 kilometers deep. The Puerto Rico area sits on and in between a couple different troughs and subduction zones here. There's the Mariottos Trough here, and a couple other troughs up here, Monotrough and subduction zone here to the north and to the east. That puts a squeeze, so to speak, on the Puerto Rico land here. It's always been very active in terms of swarming here with this plate tectonic dynamics here in this area. So swarming is very common in this area. Sometimes we'll see the swarm calm down, and then that's when we see other activity ramp up around the Caribbean plate. But now kind of looks like that swarm's taking place, continuing. Only minor activity up north around the Puerto Rico Trench. Somewhat deep, though, about 43 kilometers or so for a couple 3s up there today. All right, some movement off the coast here. Mexico looks like a 4.5 coming into the region late last night. I think I remember covering that one there during the mishap of the live stream and whatnot. Nobody's perfect. Unfortunately, things happen. But I think we got some other activity out there in the Pacific. Let me see. Looks like the 4.5 is listed on the Earthquake 3D globe, but we do have some further movement along the Middle America Trench. It looks like a couple 4s kicking up here into this area of the northern end of the Middle America Trench. That's Middle America Trench. That's right down here to the south. Well up north here along the plate boundary. This is going to be the North American, and we got a little plate called the Cocos Plate here. So along that plate boundary, there is some... trying to think when the last earthquake kicked off there. Let me look at the last 7 days. Very quiet for now over the last 7 days. 30 days of activity, lacking some movement as well. So maybe an area to watch here for some seismic fill-in, so to speak, with the activity we're seeing today on the Earthquake 3D globe with those 4s into that region. Again, this area here along that plate boundary. Continue to watch that area as well. Most of the movement, though, folks, is still confined and shifted over here. What do we got kicking up here into the California area once again. 2.6 coming in as we speak just a few minutes ago. Right in that zone here on the Fish Lake Valley fault. That's a good one there. I don't know too much about this fault system. There's some historical data up north here at the northern end of some earthquakes. Nothing big, but man, this has been an area of interest here recently. But I think overall, and another one down here into the San Simeon area. Notice that these earthquakes just popping up literally within minutes of each other, but at a broad distance. So, if you look at the plate tectonics as a whole, the general movements of the plates here, I know it looks like a long ways away. For example, if we were walking or driving to Nevada from over here along the coast, it's a little drive. But tectonically speaking, these things are just a little micro center away in terms of plate tectonics, because these plates are big. They're massive. They move around. And even just a little slight adjustment can make some interesting scenarios out here for earthquake activity. Just what we've seen right now in the last few minutes with these two earthquakes popping up within minutes of each other, indicating a broad scale pressure increasing activity out here. And that's where most of the movement has been. Eastern Pacific, it looks like we may be picking up here along the adjacent plates east of the Pacific plate here. And also a swarm of movement down south here into the Tonga region with very minimal activity across the western Pacific. And that includes the areas around the Philippines. Look at this, lacking activity today. Only a handful of some smaller quakes. So the main shift, we got a 4.9 coming in here around Papua New Guinea right now. But it looks like the main shift of activity is around the west coast and the Tonga area. In the Kermadec Trench regions, where we're seeing quite a bit of uptick here. Let's see what we got. At least 4 earthquakes after midnight here. Most of those deep. The last one, a 4.5, 558 kilometers deep. So we're returning to deeper movement up here. We have seen a little bit of subsequent shallower earthquake activity up around the Tonga Trench regions and the Samoa area. Kermadec Trench. Kermadec Islands of 4.6 coming in from yesterday. No further activity here noted on the map. Let's see what we got here for the GeoNet servers, and then we'll move on. GeoNet's up. Okay, there's 3 days ago. Looks like some smaller quakes here over the last hour or two. Mostly 2s and 1s. Nothing major going on. Just glancing through some of these quakes here. Yeah, doesn't look like anything spectacular popped off here overnight. And let's do a quick glance here at the volcano drums, make sure we're not missing out on any activity. Looks fairly calm. Taupo supervolcano, about as calm as it can be. No signatures of anything going on there. All right, so back here to the earthquake activity. Absence of movement here. I think the West Coast still should be on guard here with all this movement taking place here sporadically in inland along the North American plate boundary here, the Pacific plate, the San Andreas fault that is, and also back building of pressure here prior to the plate boundary. So that's a telltale sign of potentially something getting ready to ramp up here around the California area. So we'll keep that in check for today, one of our main areas to watch for the West Coast. South America region, what do we got here? 1 earthquake after midnight. Prior to that was from yesterday, some activity kicking in. On Earthquake 3D globe here, looks like there may be some smaller quakes listed here on the map. Some 4s further down that are not being listed here by the USGS. Some of those earthquakes look like they are recent with not quite as red color rings down here around the Chile area. So some 3s kicking off here with some newer movement. The Atlantic Ocean out here looks like a 5.0 coming in from yesterday. Nothing else popping up out there for now. And let's see what we got over here. I know it's kind of a zigzag of direction today. Looking at Japan, those 2 earthquakes there from yesterday. And that's just an overall sign of lacking activity out here across the western Pacific now. But we'll keep an eye on it, see how it plays out today, folks. I mean, deeper movement all over the place here across the Fiji area. Very active across the west coast. I still think we should watch that pretty closely. The Turkey area and regions nearby, slightly elevated today, it looks like. Some 2s and 3s across Turkey. Some movement up around Romania, it looks like. What's this? Let's see what this 3.3 is. Romania coming in earlier today. 10 kilometers deep for that earthquake. And looking at the local nearby seismic activity, shows mostly 2s across the Mediterranean and around the Morocco area. A couple 2s in there as well. Yeah, but that's, goodness. It's very active. Definitely showing some very active regions out here along the west coast. So we'll continue to watch that here, folks, see how it plays out. Space weather activity. Let's jump into that real quick. And yeah, we got the drawing coming up here, folks, today. The member drawing only. We'll be holding that sometime this afternoon. It's about 1 o'clock here along the west coast right now, almost. So probably here in the next 2 hours or so. It's quite windy outside still, so I'm not for sure if I want to do it outside or inside. But I got a few things to do before I get that all set up. Make sure everyone's in the fishbowl. And it's 1 o'clock. Trying to think here. Not for sure, but make sure you guys have your notification bell clicked so you can get notified when we go live for that drawing here later this afternoon. Make sure you get in that fishbowl. Get some prizes going on there for the winners. All right, space weather activity looks flatlined. Not a whole lot of activity out here. We're well below the sea level threshold, indicating minimum solar flare activity right now. The sunspots here are disappearing before our eyes. There is a new sunspot region back here on the northeastern limb that's in view now. Wasn't there yesterday. But it is today, so we'll watch this for potential activity. Again, don't really know exactly too much about it. Can't see the structure. Looking at the UV filter here of that sunspot in question, does show a little bit of the polarity of the lines kicking up above the surface level of the sun, so to speak. So we'll watch that for some future flaring. 45% chance for a C flare. Yeah, that's probably about it. 5% chance for an M flare. It's being very generous. 1% for X flare. Proton event dropped to 25%. Notice that the global delayer absorption map is not showing any polar storms anymore after that proton event here over the last couple days. I don't know. Yesterday and the day before, it seemed like I had a little bit of pressure increase here in my brain. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It just kind of felt like a little bit of tension during those proton events. I know some people are pretty sensitive to adjustments in solar weather activity, and maybe I'm one of them. Maybe I'm just starting to notice it. Never really noticed it before, but yesterday and the day before, when those were kicking up, I definitely felt it. Hard to explain though. All right, what else we got here? We did looks like we kicked up yesterday into the KP index of 5, almost 6. Not for sure exactly where that came from. Let's see what they're putting out here. Looks like a coronal mass ejection swept past Earth early this morning at this UTC time. The impact sparked a surprising but brief moderate G2 storm. Goodness, all right. Not for sure. Again, we really haven't seen any massive CMEs from any of these sunspots here, so I'm kind of wondering where this came from. A little odd. Alrighty, weather activity. We're gonna just run that real quick. West Coast, you guys or us, we have a little bit of a break in the weather over the next few days here. There's a storm system shifting east. Going to provide some severe weather to parts of Oklahoma and Texas here tomorrow. Got a severe weather threat day there. But here for the West Coast, got a little bit of drying period coming up here over the next few days. Little storm system coming up on the weekend, it looks like. So we got a few days to dry out. But this thing, even this one's not all that impressive. Some light rainfall for the valley and snowfall in the mountains before a little bit of a stronger system pops up here on the early next week time period. And what's left behind that is some further rain and some storms coming in. More rain and snow after that. I mean, it's kind of the pattern here. About as far as it'll go. It looks like the first week of April potentially could be wet as well for the West Coast. So, goodness. But I'll take the little break. A few days of break of dryness is good to allow the moisture to attempt to soak into the ground out here. Just everything's so soaked. But it's been quite a winter, let me tell you. It's been awesome. I love it. Absolutely a big fan of the weather, and it's been one winter to remember. All right, let's see what else do we have here, folks. I think that's about it. Again, watch the West Coast, okay? Watch the West Coast pretty closely with this, this little zigzag pattern of uptick and swarms all across the West Coast area. Could be pointing towards something popping off out here. Either way, just be prepared, stay safe, and we will chat you guys here in a little bit, in a couple hours, folks, for that member drawing. And we normally give people up to the point where we're live streaming. We'll give everyone the option to join as a member. We'll write you down on the fishbowl, even if you join at the last second. So make sure you guys get in there. And we'll see you guys back here in a couple hours. We'll give away some prizes. Have a good one. Stay safe out there.